I'll be honest with you. I never believed in the stories people told about the Bangkung Bridge in Padang, Bali. You've probably heard the rumors too, about how it's the tallest bridge on the island, about how people have jumped, or worse, about how something waits beneath it at night. I thought it was just village gossip mixed with urban legends. But that was before I found myself standing there, long after midnight, when the wind seemed to whisper in a language I didn't understand. That night wasn't supposed to be anything unusual. A couple of friends had dared me to ride my motorbike over the bridge alone. It was childish, sure, but we were young and dumb, and I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid. The road leading up to the bridge was quiet, too quiet. The jungle on either side pressed in, the trees bending like they were listening. The further I went, the fewer lights I saw. No houses, no traffic, just the hum of my bike's engine and the occasional screech of cicadas cutting through the darkness. When I finally saw the bridge looming in the distance, I felt my chest tighten. Even from far away, it looked massive, a shadow stretched across the valley. The guardrails glimmered faintly under the pale glow of the moon. I told myself to breathe, to focus. It's just a bridge, right? People drive across it every day. But the moment my tires touched the start of the bridge, I felt something shift. The air grew colder, the wind sharper, like the valley below was exhaling straight into my bones. I gripped the handlebars tighter. The engine seemed louder here, echoing off the steel and concrete, but at the same time, it felt like something was swallowing the sound. And that's when I noticed it. There was no other noise. No cicadas, no rustling leaves. Just silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, making you feel like you've gone deaf. Halfway across, I slowed down without meaning to. My headlights swept over the railing, illuminating the drop below, where mist curled upward like ghostly fingers. The stories rushed back into my mind, about people seeing shadows standing at the edge, about drivers swearing they'd picked up passengers who weren't there the next second. And then I saw her, a figure, standing dead center in the road, right at the far end of the bridge. She wasn't moving. At first, I thought it was just another rider, maybe someone whose bike had broken down, waiting for help. But the longer I stared, the less sense it made. She didn't wave, didn't signal, didn't even shift her weight. She just stood there, frozen, her outline pale against the dark stretch of road beyond the bridge. I slowed to a crawl. My headlights flicked across her figure, and I caught a glimpse of fabric fluttering in the wind. White, a long dress, the kind you don't usually see people wearing at midnight on a bridge in the middle of nowhere. Her hair was loose, hanging like a curtain, black and heavy, swaying slightly with the breeze. I wanted to convince myself she was real. A person, maybe a villager, maybe someone lost. But there was something wrong about the way she held herself. Too still, too stiff, like a mannequin placed there on purpose. I felt my throat tighten. My hand instinctively went to the throttle, ready to gun the engine and fly past her. But my bike sputtered, coughing like it was struggling to breathe. The sound bounced against the steel guardrails, thin and sickly. I hadn't had engine trouble all night, and yet here, right in the middle of this bridge, it decided to choke. The woman didn't move. My headlight beam flickered, dimmed, then flared again, throwing her face, or what should have been her face, into view for the first time. Except there was nothing there. No features, no eyes, no mouth. Just a blank, pale surface, smooth as porcelain. I felt my stomach drop. My mind screamed at me to turn around, but the bridge stretched long and narrow behind me, nothing but darkness waiting. I gripped the handlebars so tight my knuckles hurt. That's when I noticed her head. It was tilting. Slowly, almost curious, like she had finally realized I was watching her. And then she took a step forward. That single step echoed louder than it should have, as if the concrete beneath her amplified the sound. My chest tightened, and the urge to flee nearly ripped through me. I twisted the throttle, desperate to hear the roar of my engine, but the bike coughed again, refusing to respond. The vibration rattled through my legs, useless and weak, like a dying animal. The woman, or whatever she was, took another step. Her movements weren't fluid. They were jerky, stiff, as though every joint resisted her, yet she kept coming closer. The wind picked up, carrying with it the faintest sound, not footsteps, but something else. A whisper. It wasn't words, not exactly. More like breathing drawn too long, too heavy, spilling into the silence. My helmet muffled the sound, but I could feel it crawling into my ears, nestling into my skull. I flicked my eyes toward the railing. The valley stretched down into nothingness, fog moving like a living thing below. For the first time in my life, I wondered if it would be better to jump. At least that way, I'd escape her. But I couldn't move. She was close enough now that I could make out the strange shimmer of her dress. It wasn't fabric, at least, not the kind I'd ever seen. It clung unnaturally to her body, shifting like it was part of her skin, rippling in the moonlight. And then she stopped, dead still, just a few meters ahead. The blank face tilted again, and though she had no eyes, I knew she was looking at me. My headlight flickered once more, casting shadows that twisted along the bridge, and in that stuttering light, her head jerked, too fast, unnatural, as if snapping into place. The whispering grew louder. This time, it almost formed words. My name. I didn't tell her my name. No one could have. Yet there it was, stretched and warped, spilling out of the wind like a secret only she should know. I froze. Hearing my name in that breathless whisper was like being stabbed in the chest. My friends had joked about ghosts before I left, laughing that maybe the spirits on the bridge would call me, but they couldn't have known this. No one could. And yet, the way she stretched my name, syllable by syllable, felt intimate, like she'd been waiting for me. I squeezed the throttle again, praying the engine would catch. Nothing. Just a pathetic sputter. My pulse hammered in my ears. I thought about abandoning the bike, just running across the bridge on foot, but something told me that would make it worse, that the second I left the bike, she'd be on me in an instant. She took another step forward. This time, her body lurched unnaturally, like a puppet dragged by invisible strings. The blank face reflected the moonlight, a smooth, pale oval that made my stomach twist. She leaned her head, slowly, almost tenderly, and the whisper shifted. It wasn't my name anymore. It was laughter, low at first, almost gentle, then sharper, broken, the kind of laugh that doesn't belong to anyone alive. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. My hands were trembling so badly, I nearly dropped the handlebars. The headlight flickered again, dimming, then plunging me into near darkness. Only the faint gleam of her white form remained, closer than before, closer than she should have been. I blinked, one heartbeat, maybe two, and she was suddenly standing just beside the railing, a mere arm's length away from me. My breath hitched. I hadn't seen her move. She had simply appeared. Her head turned sharply, no motion in between, just there, tilted at an impossible angle. Though her face was still blank, I swear I could feel a smile pressing against the skin, hidden beneath the smooth surface. And then she raised her hand. Pale fingers, long and thin, lifted slowly until they hovered above the seat of my bike. I don't know why, but instinct screamed at me. If she touched the bike, I'd never leave this bridge. I slapped the starter again, over and over, my thumb raw against the button. The engine whined, coughed, then fell silent. My heart felt like it would tear through my chest. Her hand hovered inches from the seat, trembling slightly, as if she was savoring the moment. Come closer. The whisper crawled into my ears again, though her lips, if she had them, never moved. I gritted my teeth, refusing to look directly at her, because some part of me believed if I locked eyes with that blank face, I wouldn't be able to look away. Instead, I stared at my trembling hands on the handlebars, the chipped paint, the sheen of sweat on my gloves. Anything but her. And then, the engine roared to life. The sound exploded against the silence, sharp and metallic, echoing down the valley. My bike shuddered beneath me like it had been shocked awake. I didn't think. I twisted the throttle hard, the back tire screeching before it caught, flinging me forward. For half a second, I felt hope. The headlight flared, spilling light across the bridge. She was gone. The road stretched empty in front of me. But then, my stomach lurched. The handlebars trembled violently in my grip, and the weight on the bike shifted. The seat behind me sagged. Something was sitting there. The wind slapped at my face as I flew across the bridge, but beneath it, I heard it clearly. The creak of fabric, the slow inhale of a breath that wasn't mine, and that same laugh, low, broken, right by my ear. I didn't dare look back. My eyes blurred with tears from the wind, from fear, from the realization that no matter how fast I went, she was riding with me now. The far end of the bridge was close, maybe 20 meters. I leaned forward, begging the bike for more speed. The laughter grew louder, sharper, and then, a cold hand brushed my neck. I don't know if you've ever been near a place where the forest seems to lean in. That's the feeling when you cross Bangkung Bridge on foot. The road is wide enough for cars, of course. It's a modern bridge, but when you stand at the side, looking down, your knees feel weak. It's not just the height. It's the way the gorge seems to pull you, like gravity works differently here. Like it's not only the earth tugging at you, but something waiting far below, whispering for you to let go. That night, as I leaned on the railing, I felt it stronger than ever. The wind blew in short bursts, carrying with it the smell of wet earth, moss, and something else I can only describe as metallic. Sharp, almost like iron. It burned faintly in the nose, making me think of old blood. Behind me, the forest rustled, not the usual flutter of leaves in the breeze, but a deliberate shuffle. The kind that tells you without doubt that something is moving, something heavy. I turned quickly, but of course, the road was empty. A single motorcycle passed on the opposite lane, its headlight cutting briefly through the dark before vanishing into the curve ahead. The silence after its engine faded was unbearable. I kept telling myself it was just the jungle. Monkeys, maybe, or a stray dog. But the sound came again, closer this time. A dragging step. Then a pause. Then another dragging step. As if someone or something was limping out of the tree line. You know how your body reacts before your brain catches up. My throat tightened, my stomach dropped, and I was frozen there, staring into the thick darkness where the forest met the asphalt. A shadow shifted. Tall. Too tall to be a person. And then the air changed. It got heavier, denser, like the pressure before a storm. My ears popped. That's when I noticed the railing beneath my hand was wet. Not from rain, it hadn't rained all evening. I pulled my hand back, and in the dim light, I saw my fingers glisten red. Blood. I jerked my hand back as if the railing had burned me. The blood, thick, warm, fresh, was unmistakable. My first instinct was to wipe it on my jeans, to get it off me, but something in my gut told me to stop. It felt wrong, like the moment you realize you've touched something alive that you shouldn't have disturbed. I forced myself to look at the railing again, and it was clean, dry, not a trace of red. My heart was thundering so hard I could hear it in my ears. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the shadow of the bridge lights playing tricks. But my hand still tingled, sticky, as though the blood had sunk into my skin. The dragging footsteps came again, closer, deliberate. I stepped back, inch by inch, keeping my eyes fixed on the darkness at the edge of the forest. My breathing grew shallow, the kind where every inhale feels like it takes too long, like you're giving yourself away. Then the sound stopped, and that was somehow worse. I stood there, waiting. The silence stretched. The night air pressed in, humid, suffocating. A motorbike should have passed by then. Or a car. Anything. But the road was empty, as if the world beyond the bridge had been cut off. That's when I heard it, just above me, where the metal framework of the bridge disappeared into shadows. A faint scraping, like nails dragging against steel. Slow. Careful. Not random, not wind. Intentional. I tilted my head back, and for the briefest instant, I thought I saw something clinging to the underside of the bridge. Long limbs, jointed wrong, stretched across the beams. A head hanging down, hair spilling toward the gorge. By the time I blinked, it was gone. But the metallic smell in the air grew stronger, so sharp it made my eyes water. I gripped the railing tighter, my knuckles white, half convinced that if I looked down into the gorge I'd see something staring back up at me. The river below was invisible in the dark, but I could hear it faintly, a low, steady rush of water echoing off the canyon walls. The sound should have been grounding. Instead, it felt like a whisper, reminding me how far the drop really was. I wanted to leave. Every bone in my body was telling me to get on my bike, turn around, and go. But something held me there. That same morbid curiosity that makes people watch horror movies alone at night, even though they know they won't sleep after. The silence broke with a sharp crack, like wood snapping. My eyes darted to the treeline. Nothing. Then came another noise, soft at first, almost tender. A woman sobbing. It drifted out from beneath the bridge. The hairs on my arms stood up instantly. It wasn't loud, but it carried in the still night air, thin and wavering, as if the sound itself was being pulled apart by grief. My throat went dry. I wanted to call out, to say something. Hello? Are you okay? But the words stuck. Deep down, I already knew it wasn't someone I could help. The sobbing grew louder, shifting in tone. What started as sorrow turned jagged, desperate, like someone choking on their own cries. Then, without warning, it stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, thick as fog. And then a laugh. Not loud, not manic. Just soft, breathless, and chilling. The kind of laugh that makes your stomach knot because you know it doesn't belong in a place like this. I staggered back a step, suddenly aware of how alone I was out there. The road stretched empty in both directions. The shadows pressed close. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me just beyond the edge of the light. I froze, straining to listen. The laugh had been so faint I almost wondered if I'd imagined it. But then I heard it again, closer this time, slipping out from beneath the bridge like smoke curling from a crack in the earth. I took a step back toward my motorbike, every instinct screaming at me to leave. My hand fumbled for the keys in my pocket, slick with sweat. But just as I was about to climb on, the sobbing returned. This time, it was directly under my feet. I glanced down through the gaps in the bridge's railing. At first, I saw nothing but a wall of black, the abyss below swallowing the weak glow of my flashlight. Then movement. A pale shape shifted in the darkness. It looked like someone was standing on one of the narrow beams under the bridge, swaying slightly as though balanced on the edge. Her hair was long, tangled, and wet-looking, as if she had just crawled out of the river. Even from up here, I could see the way it clung to her face. Her white dress, or what was left of it, hung in tatters, billowing gently though there was no wind. She tilted her head back slowly, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Her face wasn't right. The skin was ashen, stretched too tightly over bone. Her mouth was open in a silent scream, but her eyes locked on mine with unnatural precision, like she had been waiting for me all along. The laugh bubbled out again, this time from her mouth. High, broken, almost childlike. I stumbled backward, heart hammering against my ribs. My bike was only a few feet away, but the thought of turning my back on her made my skin crawl. I didn't know what would be worse, running or staying. Then she moved. Not climbing, not crawling, rising. As if the air itself lifted her. The moment she began to rise, I swear the whole night shifted. The cicadas that had been buzzing in the trees went silent, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam cutting jagged lines across the railing as I staggered backward. She floated up, inch by inch, her dress dragging behind her like smoke curling in water. Her hair fell across her face, but those eyes, those burning, hollow eyes, never left me. They pinned me in place like nails through flesh. My motorbike was just behind me. I could feel the cool metal of the handlebars brush against the back of my leg, but when I reached for it, my hand wouldn't move. It was like my body didn't belong to me anymore. Every muscle locked in place, and my lungs refused to draw in air. The sound of her laugh changed as she drew closer. It fractured into dozens of overlapping voices, male, female, young, old, all tangled together in a single, broken chorus. It didn't sound human anymore. It sounded like the bridge itself was mocking me. Then the air turned cold. Not the kind of cold you'd expect in the mountains at night, but a biting, unnatural chill that wrapped around my throat and seeped into my bones. My breath came out in sharp, misty clouds, though the humid Bali night should have made that impossible. She was only a few feet away now, hovering just above the railing. I could see the shredded skin on her arms, the bruises blooming across her neck as though invisible hands had once strangled the life from her. Her mouth widened into a grotesque grin, stretching too far, exposing gums that seemed blackened and rotted. "Why did you stop?" she whispered, her voice somehow both distant and right inside my ear. The question made no sense. I hadn't stopped for her. I hadn't done anything. But still, I felt like I'd been caught in the middle of something I should never have witnessed. I gripped the handlebars of my bike, finally forcing my body to respond. If I could just start the engine, I could leave this place behind. But as my fingers tightened, I realized something horrifying. The keys were no longer in the ignition. I froze, staring at the empty ignition. The metallic ring of my keys should have been there, glinting faintly in the beam of my flashlight. But it was bare, just the black plastic slot staring back at me. My hand shot into my pocket, fumbling, clawing. Nothing. I checked the other one, then the jacket, then the ground. Panic rose in my throat like bile. My keys were gone. A soft tink-tink-tink echoed against the metal of the bridge. Slowly, I turned my head. She was holding them. Dangling from her gray, slender fingers were my keys, the little flashlight charm I'd bought in Kuta swinging back and forth like a cruel pendulum. She didn't smile this time. She just tilted her head, watching me struggle, her hair dripping like strands of black seaweed. "How will you leave?" she asked. Her voice came from everywhere, above me, behind me, beneath my feet. It filled the hollow stomach of the bridge and bounced back in distorted echoes. I wanted to scream, to tell her to give them back, but my mouth wouldn't open. She leaned forward, her face inches from mine. I could see the mottled texture of her skin, the way it looked waterlogged and peeling. Her breath smelled like river mud, sour and choking. Then in one sudden movement, she dropped the keys. They clattered onto the bridge floor, sliding across the wet concrete until they came to rest right at the edge of the railing. One wrong move, and they'd tumble into the abyss below. My heart thudded, so hard I thought my chest would crack. I knew what she wanted. She wanted me to move closer to the edge, to bend down where she could get me. But without those keys, I wasn't leaving this bridge alive. The keys lay on the concrete, catching just enough light from my trembling flashlight to gleam like a cruel dare. My body screamed at me not to move, but my survival screamed louder. Without them, I'd be stranded here, alone with her. I crouched down slowly, never breaking eye contact. My knees cracked against the cold concrete, and my fingers brushed the damp surface as I inched closer. Each movement felt like it took an eternity. She didn't move. She just hovered there, inches above the railing, her body swaying slightly as though carried by some invisible current. Her head tilted further, a grotesque angle, like she was studying me the way a predator studies prey before the final strike. I stretched out my arm. The keys were just out of reach. My fingertips grazed the ring, nudging it, making the metallic chime echo through the silence of the bridge. My breath hitched. Closer. Just a little closer. And then, her voice. So many jumped. The words slithered into my ear, cold and venomous. My hand jerked back instinctively, but I forced myself forward again, fingers finally curling around the keys. Relief surged through me, until I realized she was now gone. The space by the railing was empty. I stood quickly, scanning the darkness, whipping the flashlight beam across the bridge. Nothing. The night air seemed still again, almost normal. But then, from right behind me, just an inch from my neck, came the faint sound of dripping water. And a whisper. "Now it's your turn." I spun around so fast the flashlight nearly slipped from my hand. The beam cut through empty space. Nothing was there, no woman, no shadow, not even a trace of movement. But the sound of water dripping lingered, steady and rhythmic, as though it was coming from just inches behind me no matter which way I turned. My pulse hammered in my ears. I gripped the keys so tight they bit into my palm, the edges sharp against my skin. I had them now. All I had to do was jam them into the ignition, kick the bike alive, and tear out of here. Simple. But my legs wouldn't obey. It was as if the concrete under me had thickened, rooting me in place. The dripping grew louder. Then it changed. It wasn't water anymore, it was footsteps. Bare feet slapping wetly against the concrete, coming closer, closer, closer. I forced myself to move. My hand shot out, fumbling the keys toward the ignition. The first try missed. My panic made me clumsy. The second time, I forced them in, metal scraping against metal with a sound that felt deafening in the silence. The engine coughed once, then died. Behind me, a laugh. Low, guttural, broken. I slammed the key forward again, twisting with all the strength I had. The engine sputtered, stuttered, then roared to life with a sound that nearly made me cry with relief. But just as I swung my leg over the seat, I caught sight of her in the rearview mirror. She was sitting behind me, so close I could see the wet strands of her hair sticking to my shoulder. My blood turned to ice. In the tiny rectangle of the mirror, her face loomed over my shoulder, pale and dripping, her lips stretched into that impossible grin. Her eyes were locked onto mine, not in the glass, but in reality. It felt like she was looking through the reflection and straight into me. I didn't think. I twisted the throttle, the bike jerking forward so violently the tires squealed against the damp concrete. The engine's roar ripped through the silence, shattering the heavy stillness of the bridge. For a heartbeat, I felt the surge of hope, movement, escape, speed. But then I felt it. Hands. Cold, slimy, waterlogged hands, sliding over my waist, clutching the fabric of my jacket. She was holding on. The weight of her pressed against my back, light yet suffocating, as though the air itself had grown heavier. I pushed the bike harder, the headlight cutting a tunnel through the darkness ahead. The bridge seemed endless now, stretching far longer than it should, the exit swallowed by shadows. My breaths came ragged, fogging in the unnatural chill that clung to me. And then her voice. Not behind me, not from the mirror, but right in my ear. Faster. The word dripped with mockery, as if she was enjoying the ride, urging me on like some twisted passenger. My whole body shook, but I obeyed, slamming the throttle wide open. The bike roared, trembling beneath me, the vibrations rattling my bones. I didn't dare look back again. The mirror had already shown me too much. But even over the engine, over the rush of wind tearing past my ears, I could still hear her laughter. It wasn't behind me anymore, it was everywhere. Above, below, inside the hollow ribs of the bridge itself. And in that moment, I knew, no matter how fast I went, she was not the kind of thing you could outrun. The beam of my headlight finally caught the far end of the bridge. Relief surged through me, wild and desperate, but it was tainted by dread, because the laughter hadn't stopped. If anything, it had grown louder, filling the night like a storm. The bike rattled beneath me as I sped toward the exit. My hands ached from how tightly I gripped the handlebars, and every nerve in my body screamed for freedom. Just a few more seconds, and I'd be off this cursed stretch of concrete. And then silence. The laughter, the footsteps, the dripping, all gone in an instant, swallowed by the dark. Even the cold seemed to lift, replaced by the normal humid night air. For a moment, I almost believed it was over. Almost. I burst off the bridge, tires skidding onto the gravel of the winding mountain road. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just kept going, riding into the jungle, my engine's growl echoing between the trees. But as the road curved, I caught sight of my mirror again. There was nothing behind me but darkness. No pale figure clinging to my back. No eyes staring into mine. Just the empty road stretching into the night. And yet, the mirror fogged over, as if someone had leaned close and exhaled. For words appeared in the condensation, written in shaky, wet strokes. See you again. My heart nearly stopped. I swerved, almost losing control of the bike, before forcing myself to look away from the mirror. I didn't glance back again, but even now, whenever I drive alone at night, I can still hear it faintly, the sound of dripping water. Like she's still riding with me,